Have you ever wondered what really happened to the guy behind Ancient Aliens, the man who turned wild theories into a worldwide phenomenon? What if I told you his story goes way beyond what you've seen on TV, packed with unexpected twists, secret battle, and a lifestyle that's straight out of a sci-fi movie? Stick around, because you're about to discover the surprising truth that even the biggest skeptics didn't see coming. He started with nothing but a passion and a magazine no one had ever heard of. Yet somehow that forgotten stack of glossy pages became the first spark in a wildfire that would blaze through mainstream television and internet culture. Giorgio A. Tsoukalos, with his gravity-defying hair and far-out ideas, didn't wait for the world to accept him. He simply charged forward, transforming speculation into spectacle, mystery into momentum. The world laughed at first, then it started listening. Now, fans line up just to catch a glimpse of him at ancient sites halfway across the globe. And believe it or not, even Oxford called him in for a debate. The man once dismissed as a joke now sells out arenas discussing ideas others still whisper about. Born on March 14, 1978, in Lucerne, Switzerland, Giorgio grew up in a quiet world framed by mountains, neat uniforms, and orderly Swiss school. But inside, his imagination didn't play by those rules. His roots stretched back to Greece, and so did his curiosity, anchored in mythology, fire-breathing legends, and tales of gods descending from the sky. While his classmates focused on math homework, Giorgio was already gazing upward, wondering who else might be out there. That fascination started early, but it wasn't random. It came wrapped in brown paper, passed down by someone who believed in him. It was his grandmother who handed him a book that would shape the rest of his life. Chariots of the Gods by Erich von Däniken. Giorgio wasn't even a teenager yet. Most kids that age would have shrugged off the complex theories of alien visitors influencing ancient civilization. Giorgio read every word. Years later, when he picked it up again, it didn't feel like a coincidence. It felt like fate. That second read wasn't just nostalgia, it was a revelation. The book had waited for him to catch up, and this time, he was ready to dive all the way in. But Giorgio didn't follow the academic path you'd expect from someone who built a career on ancient texts and unexplained mystery. Instead, he studied sports communication at Ithaca College, not archaeology, not ancient history, football and media. At first glance, it makes no sense, but maybe that's exactly why it worked. He wasn't trained to follow the rules of research. He was trained to tell a story, and that made all the difference. Even as classmates like Jason Colavito, who would become one of his most vocal critics, walked the same hall, Giorgio kept pushing forward, undeterred by academic resistance. Before the world knew him as the face of Ancient Aliens, Giorgio was elbows deep in a completely different world, bodybuilding. It wasn't just a passing interest, it was his entire world. He worked behind the scenes at high-profile events like Mr. Olympia, handling logistics and making sure the show ran flawlessly. Eventually, he founded his own promotion company and launched the San Francisco Pro Grand Prix, one of California's biggest fitness competitions. Industry giants like Ronnie Coleman praised his effort. Giorgio mastered the art of spotlight and stagecraft, skills that would become crucial when he shifted from gyms to Galaxy. Even while his bodybuilding empire grew, Giorgio was building something much more unusual in the background. At just 20 years old, he co-founded Legendary Time, a magazine dedicated solely to the ancient astronaut theory. It didn't aim to please mainstream historians, it aimed to wake people up. Giorgio wasn't just writing articles, he was shaping a movement. He served as editor-in-chief, publisher, and public face. The magazine posed bold questions. What if the gods were actually extraterrestrial beings? What if lost civilizations weren't so lost after all? While critics rolled their eyes, Giorgio spoke plainly, using language anyone could follow. That made him dangerous, because people listened. At the same time, he was still organizing bodybuilding contests, booking hotels, securing sponsorship, and managing massive events. Balancing both lives would have exhausted most people. Giorgio made it look seamless. By 2008, Legendary Times wasn't just another fringe publication. It was the hub for believers in the unexplained. And Giorgio wasn't content with just writing articles. He joined forces with the man who had inspired him, Erich von Däniken. Working together, Giorgio was named director of the Center for Ancient Astronaut Research. It wasn't just a title, it was a validation. Soon, the magazine became more than a publication. It became a launchpad. Giorgio began collaborating with other voices in the field, David Hatcher-Childress, Robert Bauval, and more. These weren't mild speculators. They had theories involving anti-gravity, celestial alignment, and technology lost to time. Archaeologists scoffed. Giorgio doubled down. He wasn't seeking mainstream approval. He was building something that lived outside the walls of academia, and he believed in it enough to risk everything. Then came the next frontier: television. In 2002, Giorgio made his first appearance on a show called In Search Of. He was introduced as an Egyptologist, though his real credentials were in communication. It didn't matter. What mattered was how he spoke. With absolute certainty, he presented theories that seemed outlandish, but somehow plausible in his hands. Between 2002 and 2007, he kept showing up on Is It Real?, Is There a Stargate?, and other small productions. Each one was a test. Would audiences tune in? Would they believe? Producers started noticing. Giorgio had something rare, a mix of charisma, conviction, and controlled chaos. By 2007, he was appearing regularly on the History Channel, the Sci-Fi Channel, National Geographic, and the Travel Channel. His face and voice were becoming familiar, but he wasn't just a guest anymore. He was becoming part of the main event. And when networks needed someone to explain theories that lived at the edge of science, Giorgio was already there, magazine in hand, theory ready. Then, in 2009, everything changed. The History Channel launched Ancient Alien. Giorgio wasn't just a contributor, he was the face of it. The show exploded in popularity. People couldn't look away. His energy, his wild hair, his unwavering delivery. It became iconic. His catchphrases echoed across late-night radio on Coast to Coast AM, where he became a recurring voice. And the meme? That famous still image of him, hands in the air, eyebrows raised, simply saying, "Alien?" It went global. But behind the laughs was a man who believed deeply in what he said, and millions listened. By the time the show crossed 200 episodes, Giorgio had become something more than a host. He became the symbol of a question no one could quite dismiss. What if the past we think we know isn't the full story? Back in the early 2010s, the internet had found its next unexpected icon, and no one saw it coming. Giorgio Tsoukalos wasn't just a TV host anymore. He became a living meme, but what could have been a punchline turned into a power move. He leaned into the chaos, and that wild-haired silhouette started popping up everywhere. Reddit threads exploded. Tumblr users reimagined him in every possible scenario. Twitter turned his face into a universal reaction. And the line, "I'm not saying it was alien, but it was alien," even though he never said it exactly like that, became legendary. What started as mockery quickly transformed into a kind of mythos. Audiences weren't just laughing at it, they were curious because of him. There was something magnetic about how seriously he took the theory, how passionately he spoke about cosmic possibility. The hair was part of the appeal. Sure, it looked like he had been zapped by intergalactic energy, but beyond that, he wasn't pretending. Giorgio believed every word. In an era where everything felt ironic, that sincerity was rare. That's why fans followed him, why conventions like Alien Con sold out year after year. And Giorgio? He never tried to dodge the meme. He embraced it like an old friend. In fact, when asked about it during a Reddit AMA, he said he was honored. That's not the reaction most people would have if their face became a global joke. But Giorgio saw the bigger picture. Attention was a gateway to awareness. And awareness? That meant people were finally asking the right question. By 2014, Giorgio had parlayed his fame into a new series, In Search of Alien. No longer just a commentator, he was now leading the charge, getting his hands dirty, literally. From digging into the mystery of Atlantis to investigating magnetic stones like the Roswell Rock, he wasn't waiting for evidence to come to him. He was on the ground, in the desert, caves, and archives, pressing scientists and skeptics with the same confidence that made him famous. The show didn't last long, 10 episodes, but its impact stretched well beyond those brief months. He wasn't just filming content, he was crafting an experience for the true believers who craved more than what mainstream science had to offer. And still, the critics circled like vultures. Words like pseudoscience and conspiracy got thrown around a lot. But Giorgio had already crossed into territory where critiques didn't matter, because while scholars were writing rebuttals, Giorgio was being invited to speak on Joe Rogan's podcast twice. That's no small deal. And during those episodes, each over 2 hours long, Giorgio didn't hold back. One viral moment, when he declared that ancient civilizations across the globe didn't stumble on similar pyramid shapes by accident. They were following blueprints handed down from otherworldly visitors. Say what you want about the theory, but millions watched, shared, debated, and more importantly, they remembered. This wasn't just about aliens anymore. It was about cultural memory, about a world that felt more connected when we acknowledged its strangeness. Giorgio understood that better than most. He'd say things like, "We have amnesia as a species," and the audience, whether they agreed or not, leaned in. Because even if you didn't buy the story, you were still captivated by the possibility. That's what made him different from every other talking head. He wasn't selling certainty, he was selling wonder. And just when you thought the meme had peaked, Giorgio showed up on SciFy's Resident Alien in 2021, not as a joke, but as himself. In the show, even the alien character nodded in recognition when Giorgio began lecturing about ancient masonry and extraterrestrial link. That brief cameo, it blurred the line between fiction and belief so perfectly that fans went wild. And he returned again in 2022. What started as internet culture had now become canon in entertainment. Giorgio had become a symbol, not just of alien theory, but of open-minded curiosity. But perhaps his most impressive move came quietly, without camera crews or lights. Giorgio became a staple on Coast to Coast AM, the late-night radio show beloved by paranormal enthusiasts. From 2008 to 2016, he appeared at least 9 times. That's where his most dedicated fans got their fix, where Giorgio could really let loose. No TV time limit, just long-form conversations about monolith, ancient machinery, and cover-up. That's where his passion really thrived. It wasn't scripted, it wasn't polished, it was raw Giorgio, improvising, theorizing, and still somehow making the unbelievable feel strangely possible. But all of that paled in comparison to how he built a bridge between ridicule and respect. Giorgio didn't just survive being a meme, he used it like a surfer riding a wave. He balanced humor and sincerity without ever losing his footing. He understood the secret. If you can become part of the joke without letting the joke define you, you win. That's why people loved him, because he never flinched, he never apologized for his belief, and he never turned his back on the audience, even the ones laughing. Somehow, Giorgio A. Tsoukalos managed to make aliens cool again. He didn't need Hollywood blockbusters or billion-dollar budget. He needed a question, a camera, and that one unforgettable line. "I'm not saying it was alien." And just like that, millions of people started wondering, what if it really was? The moment Giorgio Tsoukalos stepped onto a dimly lit stage in Boise, Idaho. Yes, Boise. It was clear something rare was happening. Theaters that usually stayed quiet on weeknights buzzed with excitement as fans packed in to hear him speak not just about aliens, but about the unknown, the forbidden, the wildly speculative. And they weren't just here for Giorgio. He was flanked by his inner circle. Nick Pope, David Childress, William Henry, turning each show into a traveling phenomenon that felt more like a rock concert than a history lecture. VIP photo ops sold out fast. No autographs, though. They'd learned the hard way after being mobbed in Minneapolis. But even with rules in place, people came from states away just to be in the same room. Something about Giorgio's energy made the impossible feel close enough to touch. But the road didn't end at American theater. Giorgio became a global fixture, commanding 5-figure appearance fees at international expos and packed-out conferences. One day he's leading an expedition in Bolivia. The next, he's on stage at the Oxford Union debating professors who scoffed at his theory. That debate, combative, was streamed across the globe. Despite the opposition, Giorgio didn't flinch. "If you don't upset the status quo," he said, "you're not doing it right." That moment became a rallying cry for fans who believed academia had been hiding the truth for too long. And while Giorgio was dissecting mysteries on air, he was also building something personal. His passion for the unexplained wasn't a performance, it was his entire life. He wasn't just analyzing Puma Punku's impossibly carved stone. He was walking through the ruins himself, running tours to Tiwanaku, Göbekli Tepe, and the Nazca Line. He brought along engineers like Casey Hemachar, who openly questioned whether those ancient cuts could truly be made with primitive tools. These weren't just tourist trips, they were pilgrimages to forgotten puzzles. Giorgio became the Indiana Jones of the paranormal, except this time, the artifacts pointed to the stars. The deeper he went, the fiercer the resistance grew. From Smithsonian takedowns to full-blown online feuds, the pushback was relentless. But perhaps none hit more personally than his conflict with journalist Jason Colavito. It started as a simple interview, but the moment Jason challenged him, the interview flipped into a cold standoff. Emails turned bitter. Giorgio blocked him from connecting with Eric von Däniken, his own childhood hero. And in a later episode of Ancient Aliens, Colavito's name appeared on screen, eerily framed by sinister music, casting him as the ultimate skeptic villain. For Giorgio, critics weren't just detractors, they were barriers to a truth he felt humanity wasn't ready to admit. Yet away from the spotlight, a quieter version of Giorgio existed. He married Crix Beale in 2013, a glass artist whose work shimmered with the same mystical charm that Giorgio sought in ancient carving. Crix, once rooted in Florida's quiet art circle, followed Giorgio to Los Angeles, where she built a loyal fan base selling handmade glass pieces online. Giorgio proudly wore her jewelry on camera, never explaining it, just letting it shine. At home, their lives were far from science fiction convention. Friends described cozy nights, laughter, and mutual respect. Their bond was proof that even those chasing alien civilizations need somewhere soft to land. Despite his fame, Giorgio's private life remains wrapped in mystery. Born in Lucerne, Switzerland to Greek and Austrian parents, he rarely talks about his upbringing. He's never confirmed if he has children. While his hair became an icon and his gestures a meme, his real world stays deliberately closed off. His home, visitors say, is like walking into a museum, half alien relic, half bodybuilding trophy. That second half surprises many. Before Giorgio was unraveling theories on national television, he was deep in the fitness world. After earning a communications degree at Ithaca College in 1998, he organized the San Francisco Pro Grand Prix and worked in bodybuilding promotion. But he never stopped dreaming about lost civilization. The magazine he edited on the side, Legendary Times, eventually became the stepping stone to his media empire. That empire exploded in 2009 with Ancient Alien. Giorgio didn't just host it, he helped shape its DNA. As the show took off, so did his side venture. He created In Search of Aliens, made cameos in shows like Resident Alien, and kept stacking public appearances. He turned controversy into currency. Each accusation of pseudoscience only expanded his audience. And behind that unconventional empire lay an equally unconventional financial legacy. Tsoukalos's lifestyle may not scream Beverly Hills, but make no mistake, his wealth whispers in exotic tones. His net worth, hovering around $4 million, comes from television royalty, appearance fee, global tours, and merchandise. He's owned luxury vehicles, including a black Tesla Model S and a vintage Porsche 911, reflecting his mix of futurism and nostalgia. Known to wear custom-made timepieces, his collection includes limited edition Swiss watches, one rumored to feature ancient motifs etched into the bezel. His real estate portfolio includes a craftsman-style home in California, discreetly nestled away from prying eyes, and a smaller retreat in Sedona, Arizona. Though he doesn't flaunt jet, he frequently charters private flights for international appearances. As for insurance, industry insiders say he holds comprehensive policies covering intellectual property, health, and even tour cancellation protection. His investments go beyond alien lore. He's put money into small publishing ventures, memorabilia startup, and partnered with independent researchers on limited-run book series. Giorgio's key financial move, turning niche fascination into evergreen content. He built wealth not by chasing trends, but by owning a narrative no one else dared to touch. His life proves that belief, when coupled with strategy, can be profitable. So what can we learn from Giorgio Tsoukalos? That unconventional paths often come with resistance, that critics will always be loudest when you're onto something, and that passion, when pursued relentlessly, becomes power. Whether you believe in ancient astronauts or not, one thing is clear: Giorgio didn't just ask questions, he created a movement. And in a world still afraid of the unknown, that might be the boldest move of all. So what do you think of Giorgio's wild journey? Like, comment your favorite moment, and subscribe for more deep dive. Next up, untold stories of Hollywood's biggest mystery. Stay curious.